it going, folks? Carlos R. Benitez back here again. Episode 7 of My Dog's Place. Still here at Ashes Cigar Lounge in Kendall, Florida. Big shout out to Kush, big shout out to Manny, big shout out to Omar. I really appreciate you guys for letting me shoot here. I'm really liking it here, so I think we'll be here a while. Without further ado, though, the topic of today's conversation is something that I feel once I was able to conquer it and overcome, it made me a better dog trainer. It's a very sensitive subject, and that's the mindset that you need to have as a dog trainer. We discussed before that training dogs is around the clock, an around the clock job. 24/7. Dogs don't take breaks. Dogs don't take holidays. They don't. Again, dogs are very dependent. So you have to be on your toes and you have to be on call always. The practice that we have, the facility that we run, is a two-man show. So I got introduced to this very early on, and this was something that I realized very quickly, that you need to have a very strong mindset when you do this. Now, many jobs are stressful. I have had the pleasure of working in entertainment, I've worked in sales, I've worked in the publishing industry. They all have similar stress, right? They demand a lot of work. However, it's different when you're working with dogs, and I'll explain why. And I would assume it's very akin to working with children, in the sense where you have another living being that is dependent on you, and it's not fair for them, for you to bring your stuff that's going on outside of work into the job. So I have a saying where leave your BS at the gate. Every time that I get to the land, I have to leave all of my problems at the gate, or try my hardest to leave all of my problems, all of my stressors at the gate. It's not fair to the dogs. It's not conducive to a good training environment if I'm putting all of my stress from that I can't pay my bills, or that my credit card payment is late, whatever, and I'm letting that reflect into my work. You're going to be a little bit harder on the dog than you should. You're going to push the dog a little bit harder than you should. And I've seen this with other trainers, not just myself. You're having a bad day, it's very, very difficult to not let that delve into your work. Any profession that you work in, you can vouch for this. You know that if you're in sales, you have those off days. Any time that you got into a fight with your wife or your significant other before you got into work, you know it's gonna be tough. So you're not gonna make those same calls. You're not gonna be able to reach out the same way that you would. You're just not gonna be that efficient. You have to have no emotion you have to be emotionless and neutral when you're working with dogs. Just because, now, aside from the fact that I need to leave my stuff at the door, I want this dog to learn how to sit, for example. I want this dog to learn how to lay down, for example. And they're not getting it. It's not fair for me to take that out on the dog. I have a buddy of mine, there's a great line where we don't reward for results. With dogs, we reward for effort. And I think that's so insightful, because it really paints the mindset and the ideology that you have to have when you're working with dogs. They're trying their hardest, and sometimes these dogs just can't jump that high. Dogs just, because of their build, they're lankier dogs, and they can't sit very comfortably. They can't lay down the way that you would want them to. And sometimes it's frustrating because we have a limited amount of time which we're going to train these dogs, and we need, to some certain extent, we need results. But I can't get emotional to the point where I'm taking this out on the dog and I'm being unfair to the dog and pushing them further than they need to. I've seen this with dogs that are being developed in bite work, dogs that are being worked on in terms of agility, I'm sure. You're pushing them a lot harder and you're getting mad because they're not getting what it is that you want, that you're trying to present to them. It's not on the dog. If the dog is not getting what you are presenting, don't call the dog into question. You need to call your training tactics and your approach into question. In the situation where you do get frustrated, you have to pivot. I learned that after every session, it's good to have a nice little affection session with your dog. Give them a bunch of good boys, a bunch of good girls, rub them on the ear, give them a couple, stomach taps, like all these stuffs, give them a couple pats on the back, and really enjoy this. Really show the dog that, hey man, while this might have not been the ideal way that I wanted the session to go, and again, if it didn't go the way that you wanted to, this is more calling your ability as a trainer into question than it is calling the dog into question. But to cool down and kind of remove this tension that you may feel after a session or during a session, give the dog affection. Give the dog pets, when in doubt, play with them, and cut the session shorter. You want to make sure that every time the dog is done interacting with you, is a good experience, and they're not leaving it off on like, man, I feel defeated. Wow, I wish I could have done better. It's so defeating for the dog, and when we're talking about training dogs, it's all about their engagement. It's all about their belief that they can do this, that their maximum effort is getting them results. And if we take that away from them and discourage them, we're not going to get very far. And we're going to start capping the dog at where we need them to excel. And they're not going to want to push themselves more. So when you are in doubt and you see that a session isn't going the right way, you find yourself getting frustrated, immediately cut it out and go and play something, do something with the dog that you know they're going to love. If you don't quite have a game that you can get them to play, give them a bunch of affection. Or give them a bunch of treats, whatever. But it's on you to make sure that you are ending off each session and each engagement with the dog on a good note. And lastly, guys, I had to learn that finding joy and happiness in the smallest increments of progress is so valuable. My dog, okay, they weren't able to walk on a loose leash past this one house. We got a little bit close, and he was walking on a loose leash. When before we used to get to that tree before the house, and they used to freak out already. That's progress. As compared to when we started, when they would start freaking out and they would go crazy when we got close. Before we even got to the tree. Now we're 2 trees before the house, for example. When before we could only get 4 trees before the house because there was a dog there. We have to be appreciative and take joy and take pride that now we're this much closer to working this dog, to addressing these counter conditioning these things with the dog. Or if we're training something where we're looking to get the dog to sit down, get the dog to lay down, we have to take it step by step. The dog doesn't know how to lay down in public, okay, but can they lay down on pavement as opposed to grass where we've only worked it on? Or can they lay down on gravel? Or can they lay down on wood or whatever, or on a higher surface? Let's tone it back. Let's tone it back. If we see that maybe we're pushing our dog way too much, let's take a couple steps back and break it down. Not every dog learns at the same rate. Some dogs have higher confidence, which leads them to be quicker, more inclined to do things and generalize in different situations. Not every dog is like that, though, and we need to be very careful. So I've learned that just the smallest bit of progress, even with Pachi, he used to bark every single time that a guest of mine would come into the house. Every time he would hear somebody come through the door, he would start barking. And then he stopped barking while he was in the other room and people were in the living room with him. That's progress. And I needed to appreciate that. And I was happy for that. Next step was bringing him out and having him in a crate right in front of my guest. Now he doesn't bark right in front. He might whine, but again, it's progress from where I was. Now I have to work towards the whining. That's okay. It's not frustrating the way it used to be for me. I understand and I realize I have to be thankful for the progress that I've already made and not take it out on the dog. I realize that the whining comes from a lack of knowledge on my part when I first got him, and now I'm working towards counter conditioning this. I need to be thankful that I have this opportunity of learning how to counter condition a behavior like this. I need to be thankful for the fact that I was on level 1 with Pachi, and now I'm at level 60, 70. These little pieces of these little increments of progress are so valuable. You need to take joy in them. You need to be happy for them, and you need to be thankful for them as a dog trainer. And that mindset that you keep is going to be the most important tool that you can bring to the training session. Any stress that you have at home, any anger that you have, any frustration, leave that at the gate, leave that at the door, leave that at the crate. As soon as that dog comes out and you are in working mode, you owe it to that dog to be super neutral and be fair. And once I realized that, I started having better sessions, I started out producing better trained dogs, and I started giving my clients more clarity and more value. And if you are a dog trainer, it's something you should definitely keep in mind. Even if you're a dog owner, you need to keep this in mind as well, for the sake of having the best relationship possible with your dog and making sure that they're learning as effectively as possible. So I hope that helps, guys. And as always, I appreciate you guys sticking around and hanging out with me while I talk about these things that I like to talk about. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure to follow on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter at MyDogCarl. If you guys have any questions, comments, or observations on something that you might want me to talk about, anything that you'd like me to elaborate on, just let me know in the comments. I'd be more than happy to oblige. But with that being said, guys, I appreciate you sticking it out, and I'll see you guys next time.